So generative AI is this new field, or I should say, an inflection point in the journey of machine learning around us, where for the first time, ML actually understands natural language. It understands the semantic meanings of images, and because of all those capabilities, a ton of new things are possible. Of course, one famous product we all know, and at least I am now pretty much used to using every day, is ChatGPT. The perfect sort of example and display of the new capabilities that exist in front of us. Replica. So this is a product that allows you again to chat with a bot, and the primary use cases for people that are just on their own, don't have a partner or something in their life, and they want someone to talk to. Apparently, people are getting addicted to these agents. I just read somewhere, I think some woman decided to marry her bot, and got a lifetime subscription for Replica. This is real. This is all happening. So machines now understand language in its full form. They understand grammar. They also understand the semantic meaning of things. What I mean by semantic meanings, like for example, I have a very cute dog is one sentence. I have a very cute cat is another sentence. These two sentences should be very close to each other compared to, oh, I have a fast moving car.
Welcome to another episode of First Unicorn Chats. They say it's rare to find women in finance, women in entrepreneurship, women in leadership. Luckily for us, our guest today is all of the three and so much more. We are thrilled today to have Manjot Pahwa on the show. Manjot is currently an early stage investor with Lightspeed. Previously, she served as CEO for Stripe India, founded multiple startups, and worked as Google as a product manager in the Bay Area. We speak with her about her journey as a founder, her mindset in the face of obstacles, and her view on artificial intelligence and its significance. Let's dive right in. Hi Manjot, super pumped to have you here. How are you doing?
Not bad. How about you?
I am doing well, and I'm going to dive right into a topic which you're probably very familiar with. Right? You're one of the few women, who's in the top echelons of women in finance. Right? Walk us through your journey. How did you get from where you are now at Lightspeed? Right? I would love to hear how you got here.
I'll start by saying I think I call myself as the most accidental VC that there could ever be. If you just go through the kind of stuff that I worked on in the past. So the story actually begins with being an engineer. This was hardcore infrastructure at Google. I basically was working as an SRE SWE, building internal infrastructure systems, helping scale Google products like Photos, YouTube, Gmail, and others to billions and billions of users. And did that for a whole 5 years, really honing that craft, and pretty much fell in love with infra back then. Eventually moved to product, where I was heading the product for Kubernetes, which is again a very popular developer focused platform, and was fortunate enough to be there at a time when it wasn't the winning one. So really saw that journey of an open source product becoming popular, and one of the loved back then. It was, I think, the fastest growing open source project in history, but of course it doesn't that's not true anymore. So yeah, I did that for about 2 years, and expanded the kind of things that I could work on. But to be fair, I always knew I wanted to build something of my own. In fact, even the product gig was a stepping stone before I even became one in that direction. And 2019, finally, I got the courage to leave, move back, and started up in the hottest area that was back then and right now, ML infrastructure. As startups go, quite often things didn't go as planned. We ended up folding during the first wave of COVID, and that's when I landed at Stripe. Stripe, because I felt like it was one of my co-workers from Google were telling me one of the best places to join, and I wanted to be a part of something exciting, fast growing, as well as something headquartered out of APAC that I could grow myself. So yeah,
Right.
did that for about 1.5 years, where I was heading the India team in business, and was happily doing so. Did not imagine myself in VC until one fortunate catch up with Dave from the Lightspeed India team. By then I'd known the India team for about 5 6 years, and my own, like, they'd seen my own journey from right from being an engineer to PM to founder to everything that I was doing at Stripe, and it just culturally seemed like a very good fit, as well as the startup ecosystem is one that even in my free time I would try to help out as much as I could, and I felt like this is probably one of the best ways in which I could help them out.
Right. So a lot of stuff to unpack there, right? Just to summarize, right? It starts with being a computer engineer, getting from India to the Google campus, right? I'm going to stop just at that piece to begin with, and I'll unpack the rest of it, right? Well, let's start with this, right? For a 4-year-old, if you have to explain it to them, what does a DevOps engineer at Google do?
I'll say that like a simple engineer builds software that everyone can use, for one person. But if millions and billions of people have to use that software, that's what a DevOps engineer does.
Okay, that's a straight up answer, right? Next part, how does somebody go from from an Indian tech college to basically Mountain View, Google's main campus? How do you cross that bridge?
I think I'll be again the worst person to answer this question. I think I was just as simply, as odd as it sounds, I went literally to the google.com/jobs website. I applied online, lucky enough to get a call back, lucky enough to cross all the interviews, and lucky enough to be sent to Mountain View. So yeah, I don't think I have many words of wisdom except, I don't know, work harder.
So no words around, hey, do networking early in your career, none of that.
I was as antisocial could be. In fact, if people want words of wisdom, you have hope if you're super antisocial and don't want to get to Mountain View.
No, that's very interesting, right? So uh, you go from there, you spend a lot of time from an Indian setup and then go into Google. What was that cultural change like, right? You're basically in the hub of global innovation. What was those first few days at Google like?
I mean, I think this goes back to how I am as a person, as well as just the fact that, I mean, honestly, I was so excited. This was what I as an engineer was dreaming of, working in Silicon Valley, and Google back then was the state of the art. I mean, it still is by a lot of measures.
I
I
see
think
how
it's,
I see what you did there. Was the state of the art? Okay.
no, but I mean, it was a very much a dream come true. So for me, more than the cultural shock, it was just a lot of excitement. It was like, the mad genius garage shop that I was suddenly in. And I graduated from, the stupid applications that I would write and run on my single laptop, to tens of thousands of machines that I had to run applications that were used by billions of users. So it was just a lot to definitely take in immediately, but the excitement always trumped the fear of everything else.
Right. And so how long were you at Google for?
A total of 7 years, first 5 years as an eng and last two
Oh,
years as
wow.
a PM.
So when does the bug of, doing something of your own kind of really bite you, right? Where the novelty of being at Google kind of wears off and you're like, oh, I need to go off on my own. Where does that come in that 7-year journey?
Honestly took me 4 years to finally take that step, which sounds like a very long time, and it was, but every year. So for example, 2015, I guess, I was when I started thinking, oh, what am I doing with my life? Am I doing the right things? 2016, I was like, oh, okay, I think I can explore things outside as well, and life has a lot to offer. 2017, I was like, oh, okay, maybe Bay Area is not exactly the place. So I did move back to India to start up, right? So I was thinking, oh, you don't necessarily have to be in the Bay Area to start your own thing, and you can be wherever you want to be to start. 2018, I was like, okay, I need to do this. 2019, now or never. So every
Right.
year was like a step in that direction. um, so it was definitely fueled by a number of things. One is the fact that I just felt dissatisfied with everything that I could possibly be doing. So it was a lot more intrinsic. I mean, honestly, my life was very happy. Google engineer is treated really well. The work is genuinely exciting. It's something that does inspire you. People around you inspire you. So I had no reason to complain. So it was definitely just more about, am I doing everything that I potentially can in my life?
Right. No, this is actually, I just put out a post today on LinkedIn, right? And it kind of touches on a very similar point, which is that a lot of us kind of go after stability, right? And once you do have the stability, you start missing out, you start realizing the missed opportunities, right? There's a very nice Mark Twain quote, which I often think about, which is there's no security in this life, only opportunity, right? I think that is something which probably resonates with you, having to give up that life and just kind of have that belief, right, that there's something better across all of that sacrifice, right? Manjot, in general, women would probably have a harder time starting up, right? Culturally, mindset, a lot of things kind of come into that, right? Do you think like being in the Bay Area, those were some of the, you know, I would say the shackles which you were kind of already broken free from, right? And did that make it easier for you to kind of just think that, hey, yeah, entrepreneurship is for me, and I'm going to jump right in? Do you think it would have made a difference if you were, say, in India, Google versus being there?
I mean, I think for sure,
Your decision to start up.
there is an element of being exposed to other alternate people and lifestyles, and the way people approach things in the Bay Area versus what we see in India. So there is definitely more diversity, but you know what? I'll definitely say, and this is not to toot my own horn in the least, but I think any woman, honestly, that sort of reaches that stature where she's going out on her own, making her life, building her career. She's already sort of reached a place where they feel like they don't need to prove themselves too much. So it's and that holds, at least for myself, I'll say that. I think a lot of my feelings around not being bogged down by what is expected, what is the cultural norm, which I honestly, even by moving to the US, I was already breaking by some senses. I think I learned all of that here more than the US. The US just gave me more direction into what I should do with all of that. But the core skill set was here.
Right. Do you think it's the US is probably, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, right? Do you think they're more agnostic to whether whether you're a male founder or female founder doesn't really matter as much, right? In India, there's always caveats to it, right? And even from our side of the table, I mean, of course, I'm not gonna take names, but I know there've been instances, right, wherein an investment decision has hinged on the fact that there's a woman in the lead, right? And the questions coming up are not the kind of questions that you would have if the same situation was applied to a man, right? Uh, did you was that something? I mean, in terms of you saw that hey, in the US it doesn't matter, but yeah, in India people are more kind of concerned with this.
um I think I just don't. I try not to look at life that way, because then I'd be very sad. I do suspect what you're saying is true, and that is why I tend to, I mean, you just put your head down and do the work. If life has put you in a position where you have to work 3x harder, then well, that is it. I know this is a very defeatist attitude to look at things, but I mean, it is what it is. I think, but I will add that, touchwood, I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by amazing co-founders, investors that just cared about what we were building, and not have to, at least in my eyes, not have to deal with that sort of those perception challenges. Again, I'm fortunate enough to be in a place like Lightspeed, which actually has 40-45% women in investing, which is unheard of.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, there are definitely, see, I mean, there are definitely pockets where it is much better. And as a person, you should try to gravitate towards those people, those places which don't put you through those trials and tribulations. But as a general principle, just if someone turns you down because they have perception challenges, you just move on to the next one. That's the attitude that I
Right.
normally just operate with.
I'm going to move to the next part of your career, which was actually stepping into entrepreneurship, right? Um, but you're actually someone who's actually seen the world from many lenses now, right? You've seen startups in India, you've seen startups abroad. When you kind of first started out, right? How did that influence your initial days of building? Was there a specific way that you kind of picked up in terms of how to look at a team? And that initial phase of you have so many ideas, right? How do you kind of bring it all together, get incentives aligned with different processes? What was the what are those initial days for you like when you came back to India and you had to start up again?
So I'll start with just the core feeling that I had, and I think you somewhat need to even take a step like, yeah, you know what, I don't have much of a plan, but I leave my very nice, cushy, decent job, which lots of people are trying to get in, and move back despite no one being super happy about it. The emotion was just a lot of optimism about life, a lot of supreme amount of faith in myself. And again, I don't mean it in a arrogant I can do everything way, but more, I'll figure it out. There'll definitely be mistakes along the way, but I'll figure something out, something will work out, like that sort of naive optimism to some extent. I think if you don't have that, lots of people, if people are very smart about it, I think most people would not even take the jump. Because by all means, your logical, risk reward
Right.
and life, balance, work life balance, is far too much in favor of just staying at a fast growing, larger tech company versus starting up yourself. So that was the emotion with which I started. On your question about how I approach product and how I approach team, and in those early days, right? Again, it was a lot of iteration. It was so much iteration. I think I became a 10x better product manager after leaving Google versus being at Google and not starting up. And Because you don't realize it, right? When you're selling as with such a large brand name on you, even if you're right, even if you have all the product shops and everything else, being able to convince the person in front of you without those brand names is a completely different skill set. So how do you truly get to the answers,
Yeah.
not be influenced by your own biases? I discovered so many biases that a person, PMs especially, might have on their own. How do you, just first principles, get to truth seeking, and similar things on the team. I think it was a lot more, hey, you know what, like, you sound like a smart person, let's start working, and then sort of figuring out from there if this is generally the team I want to build a startup with versus not. So it was a lot of, naive, childish optimism. It was a lot of we'll figure something out, and iteration, versus, yeah, I had a master plan, I knew everything, I knew how to judge
Right.
people, I knew how to work with other people. So it's definitely not, none of that.
No, you touched upon something, right? Which was that, hey, how do you sell without a brand name at your back, right? And that is something that I very closely resonate with, right? Because let me ask you this question first, right? Was there like kind of a flash in the pan moment where you're like, while you were at Google, right? That thing happening, and then you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm ready to start up. Did you have a moment like that?
For sure. I mean, I was really thinking of, ideas, and I was in the middle of it, right? I was in the eye of the storm. So many founders and engineers talking about, hey, this idea, let's try out that idea, and I was talking to customers day in, day out. In fact, that's the only thing I had when I moved back. I did not have a team. I had not bothered reaching out to investors. I had some basic ideas, and I had some customers that were, trusting me. So that was the only thing I had. So I would talk to customers and run by these ideas. In fact, the first idea I started with, I very quickly, the moment I left, figured out, okay, this is definitely not going to fly, or at least not be a very large outcome.
Right.
So for sure, there are those things, but I think it's more important to know how to navigate an idea maze, as has been said popularly by Paul Graham, where you start at a point. So the starting point actually is immaterial. You start wherever you start, but you should know how to navigate to value pools.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? And something similar happened with me when there was a time that I got out of got out of college, got out of multiple jobs, and there were all these big brands which I had at my back, right? McKinsey, WTO, LSE.
And then, I had this opportunity to work in a boutique setup, right? And it was that, and it was another branded kind of a shop, right? And I remember when I made this decision some 7 odd years back, right? One of the things that somebody who was a friend of mine was advising me, he was like, look, until now, there were these good brands and things who taught you a lot, and I'm sure you became a better person for it. But the question of you being a good, smart professional or a business person, now it's only answered when you can sell without those names at your back, right? So when I got into sell side investment banking, there was no brand name to go with it, right? It was just one person selling to another, right? So I think those few years gave me a lot of confidence, right? That if I have a point of view, right, and if I have conviction and I can back it up with evidence and data, right, I can kind of get get through to the other side, right? That was my kind of moment of starting up, right? Uh, no, but yeah, totally resonate with you there, right? Do your through your journey, right? Could you tell us a little bit more about your first startup? When you began to raise capital for this, right? What was did you feel at that point in time, was that the most exposed you felt after Google in terms of putting yourself out there? Because a lot of times you are kind of behind that glass, right? And you kind of protect it. It's only when you come to front end sales, right, that you really expose yourself. So whether that's on the product or it's on fundraising, would love to understand what your experience was like in your first stint of fundraising. What was that like?
Aha, funny enough, we never quite got into formal fundraising. But like I mean, some folks at Lightspeed and Sequoia and others, like some other people in the ecosystem, basically knew that I was moving back. So for sure, there were conversations and everything, but I wouldn't call it like a full blown fundraising.
Okay, I think that's a part I have to edit out. Then I'll do that. uh, I'm going to speak about, just how important the co-founder relationship is, right? And I think that is something that you and I have spoken extensively about. Um, let's start with the beginning, right? How do you kind of go about finding someone, as a co-founder to kind of go on that journey with? And this is all before, you don't know how you'll react in a bad situation, etc. So how does that kind of a co-founder matchup happen? Because you've seen it on both sides now, right? Buy side, sell side. What do you think is the ideal kind of co-founder matchup?
I mean, ideal co-founder matchup is honestly just people you trust. That is by far the biggest thing you should optimize for. And one I cannot stress enough on. I mean, I know people would try to, oh, let me match the skill. I'm a tech person. Let me get a business person, or I'm a business person. Let me find a tech co-founder. For sure, I mean, skill set, complementary skill sets help in building out that MVP, but nothing can replace trust. And this is a relationship which will be one that really like affects your life, your future, your outcome, your every my mental peace. So for sure, I think you should optimize for that far above and beyond everything else.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? The only thing is that trust can basically be broken at any stage of a relationship, right? So how does if you're a founder who's building, right, and you want to have that foresight that hey, I've not had a disagreement or trust issues with this person yet, but how do I build contingencies around that on day zero? Is that something that that founders can do in this early stage and nowadays? And what do you recommend?
I mean, for sure, trust can be broken at any stage. You might be friends with the person for 20 years of your life, and then starting up is a completely different, dynamic, which can lead to a lot of friction. And I've seen those cases multiple times over and over again. See, this is again where, startups are fundamentally risky. For sure, you can try to de-risk as much as you want to. So your de-risking can be in the form of, oh, let me choose the largest market, so at least the market is not a question. Oh, let me choose a founder that I've worked with for n number of years, so at least that you have some experience working together. So you try to de-risk as much as possible. But for sure, I mean, if there were recipes to this, most of the startups that fail today fail because of indigestion and not external factors. That
Right.
could have been completely prevented if there were a formula.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. closing down a startup, right, and moving on from it is a very painful process, right? I think in this day and age of us all celebrating fundraisers and whatnot, right? I think the part which is less spoken about is what happens when when you set out to do something and you go against the odds and you sometimes fail, right? What was that experience for you like? Was that realization that hey, this might not go forward, right? So how did you? What was that experience like? Just in your own words.
Yeah, I mean, extremely heart wrenching. Like by all means, from the highest point of confidence when I started out, I fell to the lowest point of confidence in my life to describe that particular point, and a lot of confusion. When I wrapped up, like I mean, when I started out, I thought I'd be doing this for 10 years of my life, and who could have predicted the 10 things that happened, including a global pandemic. um, uh, so so yeah, I mean, it's definitely something which I was lost in terms of what to do next with my life. But that led to experimentation again. So all who wander are not lost, and I wandered. I tried starting up again, and realized I just don't have stomach for it right now. I thought of joining early stage teams, and figure out again that that might not be the best step for me. And I settled on growth stage opportunities. So it was a lot of experimentation. I did consulting. I tried to go out of dev tools, so many things, to figure out, what is it that excites me, and makes me want to work hard, like that again.
Did at any point did you feel that hey, this is really affecting my mental health through this, especially the down phases? Did you go through that?
For sure. I mean, I think there's a reason why founders that survive for long enough become very even keeled in general. There's enough that will go up and down, like on literally on a daily basis. And there were definitely, once we get into all the stories, there'll be definitely daily things that would happen that would be super encouraging one day and the lowest point the next day. During these times, it's all those cliched things we hear and we dismiss, like it's never as good as you think and it's never as bad as you think. Help, but not really. I mean, it's just trial by fire. So you just learn, you go through the
Yeah.
motions and you learn.
Did you change something about, let's say, your mindfulness practice or your mental health, or just some conscious decision after the fact that hey, this is what I'm going to do to take care of myself a little bit more?
I'm always really bad at sticking with at least mindfulness practices, so I've always failed at that. But I've one thing I ensured was just focusing on general fitness. So I would not eat unhealthy things. I would work out. That I think really helped and added to ensuring a better state of mental health for me. And I mean, at that point, just being surrounded by family was actually a good thing. I did not
Yeah.
realize that, and when I moved back, it was more about just I felt mentally I could take more risk in India. I think one deep reason for that might be family, and just having family around me, I think also helped a lot.
Yeah, I think I totally kind of relate to that, right? Because yeah, I think having gone through a similar phase, right? You kind of realize that even with kind of keeping yourself mentally strong, it kind of ebbs and flows, right? You have your good days and your bad days, right? But yeah, for me, it's been very similar. Three practices that really went and still go a long way for me is. Definitely some physical activity early in the day, some sort of mindfulness or meditation practice for like about 20 minutes in the beginning, and ending the day with an intermittent fast, right? So by the time you wake up, your body is like you're very fresh, you're very sharp, right? So I think for me, those three things externally, yes, and I think through those phases, you actually get to learn the importance of people around you, right? Because ambition is it's a weird thing, right? Because it kind of dulls out everything else in your life. Only when you kind of go through a down phase, you start to realize how important the people around you are, right? So I think it's a part of the journey of the entrepreneur.